Good afternoon. My name is Missy Hollis. I work in the State Specifications and Estimates Office. I did go a little brighter here. I know it's the end of the afternoon and many of you have had a long day, but the last two issues here, while maybe fairly insignificant when it comes to overall cost, they are of quite a bit of importance to our number one customers, the traveling public. The two issues are dealing with temporary signals and litter removal and mowing. I'm going to go through a little bit of the history about each one of those and introduce the new supplemental specs that are in effect now and give you a few reminders on each of those. For the temporary signals, the estimates bulletin in effect goes back to last year in September. It was Estimates Bulletin 11-09, and the litter removal and mowing bulletin goes back to 2009. It was updated in 2010, but we continue to see ongoing issues with that. So I'll give you a little bit of a reminder of why we made those changes and what the current guidelines are. Looking at our temporary signals, in the past we had payment based on a limited number of days when the temporary signals were in operation, but we had no separate payment for the maintenance issues that would come up and no real payment for when the contractor was in an on-call status. Working with our DOT folks in both design and construction and several representatives from industry, changes were made to the 102 specification to pay for the full duration of the contract time, and that will include aligning signal heads as needed for lane shifts, any maintenance issues that may arise, and on-call days. The 102 specification is used on all projects, and you need to make sure that the pay items are used on any projects that may be impacted by construction operations. So pretty much if you have signals on your project and it's something other than just a landscape-only project, you will be seeing the signalization and maintenance items on there. Looking at the current 102 supplemental specification, the first item for signalization and maintenance includes the temporary poles, the span wires, any portable signals that may be necessary, adding or shifting signal heads, addressing any trouble calls, maintaining the timing and preemption, and restoring any loss within 12 hours. I've seen some recent plan notes that try and help or supplement these, but keep in mind this information is in the supplemental spec and you do not need to repeat it in your plans. The second pay item that goes along with the temporary signalization is the temporary detection and maintenance item. And for detection, any product that's on the approved products list, the APL, is acceptable. The contractor may choose which method of detection they'd like to use. The spec requires that they restore any loss within 12 hours. They need to ensure a 90% accuracy per signal phase and ensure that the signals are detecting and changing to meet any traffic needs. If your traffic is backing up while your project's under construction, you may need to ask the contractor to address those issues. And for the designer, it's a reason why we need to have these pay items in throughout the duration of the project. This is the summary table that we do need to see in the plans. Just as a reminder here, we do address the entire contract time, not just those phases or those days in which any changes are thought to be necessary. Again, when we're looking at the 102-104 pay item, we're looking at the existing number of signals plus the number of temporary intersections. And again, for the 102-107 item for the detection and maintenance, we're looking through the entire contract time for the existing and for the contract time expected for any temporary or new intersections. Payment will be on the for the actual number of days used for each of those items. And then switching over to the performance turf item for looking back. Several years ago, when we used performance turf, it would include placing the seed or sod and maintaining it, and we based our payment on the turf area. We did not allow for any separate payment for maintenance operations at the time. Then we switched over to the current specification dealing with litter removal and mowing. And at the time we were addressing green areas only, and we did separate out the litter from the mowing cycles so that if additional litter removal cycles were necessary, especially while the grass was dormant, we could accommodate that. Recently, we've had the question, what about urban areas with minimal or no mowing? I'll address those in just a moment. This is the summary table that is currently required by the PPM. Again, we're looking at the green areas that are to be maintained. We address the litter removal and the mowing cycles. And according to the PPM, those because they are based on the same green areas for the same frequency for estimated quantities, those numbers should be the same. The payment, as I mentioned earlier, is based on the actual number of cycles completed. This is where if we do additional litter removal cycles, we can accommodate that. And again, the mowing will be paid for the actual number of cycles. That may vary depending on the weather and whether we have a wet year or dry year. When we look at two of our sample pictures here, it's fairly easy to calculate the area for the edge of the travel way to the right-of-way for the areas that are to be maintained, including the median area. However, lately we've had a lot of questions, well, what if we have an urban area that has very minimal green areas, but we still want to address the litter removal? Unfortunately, when we addressed this several years ago, that was not a concern when we were coming from the performance turf item. The current language in the PPM, the first green line up there, indicates the litter removal and mowing areas for each construction phase are based on the total area of the existing and proposed turf or vegetation to be mowed within the project limits. We do indicate that we should use 30-day cycles, and then we can increase them at 15-day increments. That was not intended to be a 15-day cycle because that's not something that's reasonable for us to maintain after construction is completed. Other cycles that we've seen on a regular basis in the plans, like 20-day cycles, 35 or 40-day cycles, may make your math nice when you're looking at the number of days within each construction phase. However, we don't end up with the consistent or the repeatable quantities that we'd like to see. And in trying to keep some of these consistent, predictable, and repeatable for our subcontractors working with us, we want to keep all of our estimates based on a 30-day cycle. Now addressing the issue with our urban areas with minimal or no mowing. We are currently working on that with discussions between design and construction. However, for projects at this time, what we're recommending is that you coordinate with your district maintenance office until we have that guidance available. In some cases, the district maintenance office may be able to continue with whatever litter removal and mowing contracts they have in place, or If your work is such that they do not want to have two different contractors in the same location, they may advise you to do the measurement from the edge of the travel way to the right-of-way line. But in either case, we do ask that you make sure that those areas are clearly identified in the plans so that not only the contractor knows what he's bidding on, but the final estimates and engineer know exactly what areas we're paying for. The updated instructions, when we do have better guidance for litter removal and mowing, will be sent to all BOE and PPM registered users through the contact database. If you're not currently registered, you may go to either the BOE or PPM web pages and click on the link there for the contact database and register at any time. And just as a general reminder, if you have any project-specific estimates issues, we do recommend you contact your DOT project manager or your district estimates engineer first. However, if you have a general BOE question or suggestion, feel free to contact me directly.